Today, we're real excited to dive into something fascinating ideas about how business connects with their customers. We're always looking forward to fresh perspectives on what makes a brand truly stand out. And joining us today to share his insights is Jon Morris, CEO and founder of Fiscal Advocate. How are you today, Jon?
Good. Thanks for having me here, Robert.
Pleasure. Thank you for joining. First topic I'd like to discuss about is Fiscal Advocate has had a really interesting origin story, especially with your background scaling Rise Interactive. Could you share a bit about that journey and what inspired you to
Yeah,
shift from a major digital agency to founding Fiscal Advocate?
absolutely. So I'll go back to I founded a digital agency called Rise Interactive in 2004. Did very well with it. I grew it from just me to about 250 employees, just under $40 million in 16 years, and I exited it. And I happened to have my last day at Rise on April 1st of 2020. So it was right at the beginning of the pandemic.
Right.
And I don't think I was planning on starting a business right away, but I had 3 young daughters. We're all under one roof, and the world is closed down at this moment in time, and I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And so the timing that's kind of how the timing of Fiscal Advocate formed. But the reason why I formed it was in my last 3 years of running Rise at a business coach, and we would meet every 3 months to plan the next quarter. And every time I met with him, he had the same message. He's like, the insights you have to running your business is like nothing I've ever seen. You should create a company just doing that. And I decided that would be really fun. That if I could help, really it's about improving decision-making of service-based companies so that they could either emulate the success I had at Rise or ideally have even greater success. I thought that would be a fun challenge. And so Fiscal Advocate was born.
That's a great story. I kind of reinvented myself right around that same time. So good to hear.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. Biggest wins and impact. Looking back, what's one or two Fiscal Advocates' biggest wins or success stories that truly highlighted the impact your tech-enabled strategic planning and financial management had on your clients and or the effect it had on their profitability?
Obviously, because I'm dealing with people's finances, I can't mention like specific names of companies, but people come to me generally for 2 specific reasons. Reason number 1 is they're in a cash distress situation and they need guidance in terms of how to improve profitability, improve their cash flow, all those types of things. And then the second reason is they get stuck and they're no longer growing faster and they don't know how to grow faster. And so I really am solving those 2 problems. So one client of mine, I have helped in both those scenarios. So they came to me about 14 months ago and, they had a CFO, they had actually a fairly decent sized finance department, about 12 million in revenue, but they're losing money every single month. They have no budgeting and no forecasting. Everything's kind of black box by the CFO in terms of how they're doing cash flow management, and they're just building up more and more debt. So working with the CEO, I helped really benchmark all of their numbers. So I determined, what their gross margin should be, how much they should be spending in sales and marketing, operations and finance, their executive team. And what made the partnership so great is they really listened and implemented the changes. When I'm working with someone, it has to be a partnership. I'm going to tell them how much they can spend in a specific area, but I'm generally not going in and micromanaging how they spend every dollar. It's up to them to figure it out. If they can't figure it out, then I'll get more involved. But they ended up really having a gross margin problem. So they were just not servicing customers profitably enough. And in specific business units, they were not servicing profitably enough. They've made all the changes, and now they are massively profitable. But additionally, because they improved the gross margin, we are able to spend more money and invest in growth. So they're actually winning more business. They're having a great year where their revenue is up pretty substantially on a year-over-year basis, and their profitability is up even on a greater basis. So that's an example of what we do for a lot of our clients. But the one case study that comes to mind that um, really tells the story well.
That's excellent. That leads me to Engine BI. Seems to be the core differentiator. How did this idea come about?
So this is how I ran Rise. So I basically had these Google Sheets on steroids at Rise, and I productized it. And so if you think about accounting software, so whether you're using, more entry level software like QuickBooks or NetSuite and Intouch, which is more mid-market type software, is generally backwards looking. And what you need to do is you need forward looking analysis. So it's an entire methodology of how to do budgeting and how to do forecasting. And I'll explain the difference between budgeting and forecasting in a second. But a budget is basically before the beginning of the fiscal year, you are going to create a budget for your next year. And when you're done, you're going to lock it. That lock is what people oftentimes make the mistake of doing, is because once you lock it, employees are going to quit, you're going to win new clients, lose clients, all these inputs change from what you thought is going to happen. And so then you're going to reforecast. We generally recommend a quarterly reforecast where you'll understand, okay, well, I thought this was going to happen in December when I locked it in for January through December. And now in April, I can get an update. And so this software really is your guide. And where it becomes extremely helpful is especially in the next 30 to 90 days, you'll have your best idea what your revenue is going to look like. And that range will give you an idea of what your expenses need to be. And so it really is your greatest expense management tool, but it also allows you to start thinking strategically on the investments you want to make for your business.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think in any business, the people that spend the time to forecast and budget and not do it and forget about it tend to be the ones that are successful. Okay. With obviously in your field, landscape is consistently evolving and changing. What are some effective strategies or trends that you're seeing now, particularly in the financial management, that are leading to significant growth?
So, look, I think that this is the topic du jour for every industry and every business, but everybody's talking about what you're doing with AI. The reality is, AI, and I'm going to add AI plus automation and workflow automation. If you can start investing in your financial infrastructure, you can get insights faster. You can automate workflow where you don't need as many people to do the work for you. Or if you have the same team, you get more output out of that team. And so, one of the things that I recommend is in every business, there needs to be a percent of your budget that is dedicated to innovation. And I don't mean innovation with a capital I. We're not going to create for the first time ever self-driving cars, or the iPad was revolutionary at that time. I'm talking about more I with a lowercase I. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that at the beginning of the year starts, and by the end of the year, you want your business to be better than it was at the beginning of the year. And I want you to do it with purpose. In a service-based company, I typically recommend 5% of your budget is dedicated to innovation. So if you think about, we're a finance management company. We help people with their invoicing and their AR, and we do budgeting and forecasting and cash flow analysis for them. We're part of the finance department. But we went and built Engine BI as a budgeting and forecasting tool. Next month, we're launching a product called Luca, which is an AI CFO copilot. And so if you are investing in AI and automation in your finance department, errors will be reduced, insights will be greater, speed of decision making will improve. And so those are the things that I generally talk about.
Oh, that's excellent. You're so true. And I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about AI too. I think it gets sensationalized, and most people think one size fits all, right? Like ChatGPT. I have customers myself that when they started with us, they said, "Yeah, we use AI is deeply involved in our business. We use ChatGPT every day." But yeah. I think when it comes to AI, to strike the right chord, it's It's the relationship between the human being, your workforce, and AI, where AI can assist you to be more efficient, gather data, and minimize mistakes.
Yep, I would agree. And what I would say is, um, you got to start with the problem you're trying to solve, right? And if you think about, like, you have a toolbox at home and it's got a hammer and it's got a screwdriver. Oftentimes people will be like, well, what's your AI strategy? It's kind of like saying, like, what's your hammer strategy? Like, what's your strategy for using your hammer?
Right. Yeah.
As opposed to, the handle on my door is no longer working and I got to figure out how to put it back on. And you're like, oh, I need the screwdriver for that. That's how I personally think of AI, is let's start with the problem you're trying to solve. Then let's think about what is the best solution to solve it. And AI is in your toolbox that you have to think about, okay, I need to use that to fix this problem.
All right. Yeah, no, that's a great way to look at it. And it's going to involve, I think, what you imagine AI to be in 5 years or 10 years is different than someone else. And I think we're probably all going to be surprised where we sit here in the next 5 to 10 years. It's exciting, but it's also has a little scary at times too.
Look, there's a lot of unknown, and with unknown, I was talking to a company who built a really cool AI tool for digital marketing agencies. And I was talking to him yesterday, and I just asked out of curiosity, like, what's the number one reason people are not buying your product? And his response to me was fear, that a lot of people feel like if they incorporate this, that their job might be lost. Yeah. And my instinct is that if you can leverage this as a tool, people are going to want more for the same dollar as opposed to the same amount for less dollars.
I agree 110%. Yeah. And as I said, that core is the relationship between AI and your workforce. Right. For people that are, or companies, people deeply involved in the financial health and strategic growth, what's one piece of advice you could offer them as leaders looking to optimize their financial strategies?
So the first thing is, for whatever industry you're in, is find out what the benchmark of your gross margin should be. So, just give an example. If you're a $10 million company and your gross margin is 30% in the professional service space, and the industry standard is 50%, and another company is a $10 million company with a 50% gross margin, one company has $5 million, the 50% gross margin, to invest back in their business or put in their pocket, and the other one only has $3 million. And, in the service-based sector, the companies I'm dealing with, 90% of them, before they come to me, have no idea what their gross margin is, how to calculate it, why it's important. And so if there's one number, that's the number that you really got to figure out how to improve. The second thing that I would say is, and I don't care what industry you're in, we all have an infinite amount of KPIs to analyze. And, if I ask what your KPIs you analyze versus KPIs of another company, I'm probably going to get a different answer. Well, I'm going to give you 3. And I really believe that these are the 3 that are the holy grail and the most important numbers to analyze. The first is, how much cash do you have relative to your monthly overhead? Microsoft bought LinkedIn for $26.2 billion in an all-cash deal. If you have lots of cash, you have lots of optionality. The second one is your profit margin. Every industry has a standard of what your profit margin should be. My recommendation for the service-based industry is a 20% profit margin. That is considered, to be the best of the best. And then the third is, how fast are you growing on a year-over-year basis? If you think of yourself as the CEO of a company running a business and you just want to grade yourself, if you just grade yourself on those 3 numbers, now, and every decision you make revolves around those 3 numbers, you're most likely going to build something special. If you've been doing this for 10 years and your growth rate on a revenue basis year over year is 0 or negative, you're probably not doing that great of a job, and unless you happen to be in a revenue declining sector, which I would be concerned about also. And so those are the 3 kind of drivers that I look at.
Oh, well, that's Wow, just thinking about that, that's pretty cool. Easy, and it's a good.
Exactly. The goal is not to, the goal is to be as simple as possible, you know?
Yeah.
And I met with a company that was telling me that they track 315 KPIs every day.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, if you're doing that, you're probably tracking nothing. And so that's kind of how I came up with these three to focus on.
Oh, that's great insight. Thank you. What is Fiscal Advocate doing well now versus what Fiscal Advocate isn't doing well, where you feel it needs improvement?
Sure. I would say that in year one, the learning curve and the value that we provide is substantial. You know, it's almost revolutionary for a lot of the businesses we work with. Once we get the KPIs that we want to optimize, it's kind of like driving on the highway on a straight road where the insights don't change that frequently. So we give you insights every 30 days, but at some point, the insights aren't groundbreaking. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you know what your churn is, you know what your gross margin is, you know, and it's more maintaining those insights. And what I find happens is the insights get a little bit monotonous, you know, where you're getting a report. We work really hard every month to provide some type of unique insight, but there's marginal diminishing returns in terms of the value of how much insights we can provide. And I equate it going back to, you're driving down the road, it's a straight road, and you decide to take your hands off the steering wheel. You might drive straight for a really long time, but at some point you're going to start steering off the direction. And so what I see, one of the biggest challenges and some of the things that we think about is how do we ensure that people don't kind of get caught up in this. The insights are really important to maintain, but they're not like overly exciting, but they're really important. So that's what the area that we've been spending time thinking about improving.
Excellent. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we
You know,
close?
I'll share just two more things. So the first one is, you know, I mentioned that two people come to us, people already need help with cash. The second one is that they get stuck in growth. If you're trying to figure out how to grow faster, you can't wish yourself to grow faster. You have to budget for you to grow faster. And when you think about growing revenue, you can either reduce churn, you can increase upsells, you can win new business, you can increase your average order value, or you could do M&A. Like, those are really the only 5 drivers. And so what you want to think about is, how do you fund growth? And so I'll just give you an example. If you can improve your gross margin, you can take that extra money and put it more into sales and marketing. And so that way you can become more visible. And then, you know, if you can put more money into innovation, you ideally should be able to reduce churn and improve your gross margin. And so understanding how to manipulate these benchmarkers are the keys to funding growth within your sector.
Good advice. Very good advice. Thank you. And I
Absolutely.
feel it's been a great give and take. I think our listeners are going to glean a lot of good information from this. Thank you for your time.